Hello, my name is Ali the Persian, as you may know, and I'm the host of Broken Takes. Today's episode will be discussing a lot of various different subjects regarding injuries in the NFL and what can contribute to them, such as rule changes and other factors. Please note, we're not doctors, we are not any type of special experts or anything of that nature. We're just here to discuss the subjects and provide our feedback and what we think based on various information that was collected directly from the NFL, other network sources such as ESPN, Yahoo Sports, CBS Sports, and other third party organizations that deal directly with the NFL. Please note, again, we are not experts or anything. We're just here to provide our own opinions. With that, TFTG Network proudly presents Broken Takes.
New seasons, new gear. Show the world what it means to be a fan in 100% authentic gear. Fanatics, officially licensed everything.
Get ready to dive into a new world of online shopping with the Fins Tailgate. Whether you're a die-hard sports fan or just looking for the latest fashion trends, we've got you covered. With a wide variety of products from your favorite sports teams to stylish accessories and home decor. We're your one-stop shop for all things tailgate. Our easy-to-use website and hassle-free checkout process make shopping with us a breeze. Plus, with frequent sales and discounts, you won't want to shop anywhere else. So come on in and join the party at the Fins Tailgate, your new go-to destination for all things tailgate.
Hello, welcome to Broken Takes. I'm your host, Ali the Persian, and this is a brand new season of Broken Takes. I got my boys in the back. We're going to be bringing it up, and today we have some great various subjects we're going to discuss thoroughly about injuries in the NFL and the causes of them, such as rule changes and other factors. Please note, as you saw me say the disclaimer in the beginning of the episode, we're not doctors. We're just giving opinions based on what we think in the articles that we read. So that's what we're here to talk about. And with that ado, before I bring up my two great team members here as co-hosts, we're going to also shout out to our affiliates. Yes, if you look in the description below, we have Backroom Collections. If you have some really cool canvas artwork that you can get for the Miami Dolphins, and you want to hang it anywhere, virtually anywhere, your place of business, you name it, check out Backroom Collections. They do custom work. They have really cool accessories for the mini helmets that everybody collects. With that also being said, don't forget Fanatics, your officially licensed everything place to get all your gear, all your fanfare stuff. Even pretty soon, shortly, NFLPA official trading cards will also be sold by Fanatics. So definitely check them out. Use the link below. It tells them that we sent you, and it gives us credit if you use our link. There's no other difference besides using the regular link. You can get all the same deals with our link as well. In addition, if you need more energy for all the plethora of content we're throwing out, check out Doobie Energy Drink. All smash, no crash. You don't get the jittering or shaking like you do with some of the other energy drinks. It also has a lot. It's impacted, infused with a lot more minerals and vitamins and stuff that is more beneficial to the brain and with focusing and the body. You don't get some of that byproduct that's harmful for the body using Doobie Energy Drink. And if you don't take my word for it, check out Shake Money's show. He does reviews on it. He has the videos out there that he did a full review and write up on it. See what he has to say if you don't take my word for it. But check out the link below. And let's also not forget TFTGnetwork.com, your one-stop shop for everything TFTG. You want to make sure you go there, sign up for the newsletter. You get 10% off your first purchase. Tons and tons of gear you can get, to support the channel and everything. And all the gear you get there, and I mean, there's tons of stuff. There's stuff that you've never seen before. Is all inspired by you, the people in the audience, the people that are subscribers, our members, and everything. And shout out to our members. We got 3 different levels memberships. You can check that out as well. With that being said, don't forget to check out some of our other content. We got the El Capitan show. I know as we're recording this, he probably has a show going live. You can check out Coffee and a Cup of Color and myself in the morning with Top of the Tailgate. You can also check me out on Late Night Exhale, and including Broken Take episodes. And check out Shake Money with the drive-bys, the smoke lounges, and everything, and his weekend shows that he does. Check out Shake Money and Lewis, even in the spaces and everything. Lewis has been on fire lately. KP with the fantasy talk this past week. I loved it. Can't wait to see more of it. He has another show that he's going to be putting out on the regular. I cannot wait for that. And also check out Cryptos. He goes Mondays and Thursdays, I believe. So that's really awesome. Can't wait to see more of his show. And speak of the devil, he's one of my co-hosts tonight. Check out Tonk's TMI Tuesdays. They are back. I cannot wait. So make sure you hit like and subscribe. Turn on the notification bell. Get ready, because this is going to be a great show. And with that said, let me bring up my 2 co-hosts here. Tonk, how's it going, baby? And you also got Color. How's it going, Color?
Pretty good, sir. Pretty good. How about you, Tonk?
Not bad.
Yeah, not bad. So let's get into today's episode. So as I said, we're going to be talking about injuries. And I just want to read this article by the TFTG and just start it off with this. And maybe we will talk about some of these subjects. But I'm also going to go over a lot of the stuff that I was able to gather about injuries in the NFL. And some of it, not so much the injury data that surprised me, but the amount of resources and different parties and stuff that the NFL collaborates with, and their whole health and safety department it's very involved. And there's a lot of people, and we're going to be talking about that, okay? So with that being said, the unintended ramifications, analyzing the NFL rule changes and their impact on player injuries. That's the main subject we're going to be talking about. The NFL has long been in an arena of change where rule amendments strive to enhance player safety and uphold the game's competitive spirit. However, this quest for a safer and more engaging experience, certain rule changes have inadvertently given rise to unforeseen consequences. Some of those consequences, such as consequences of having a modified kickoff rules, for example. The transformation of kickoff rules has emerged as a focal point in the conversation. The NFL's alterations aimed at diminishing high-velocity collisions and result injuries have indeed succeeded in reducing such incidents. These changes involved an increased number of players on the receiving team side and prohibition of running starts for the kicking team. Hold on. Yeah, sorry. So these changes involve an increased number of players on the receiving team side and the prohibition of running starts for the kicking. So you basically can't get like a running start, for example. While these modifications have led to fewer impact collisions, they have also led to more touchbacks, altering the dynamics of special teams and minimizing the thrill of the kick return. So that's basically talking about some of the changes they've made and how the game has kind of, the thrill of it has kind of like gone to the wayside a little bit. Targeting and helmet to helmet regulations, initiating targeting and helmet to helmet rules was a significant step toward mitigating dangerous tackles and protecting players from head injuries. These rules have unintendedly elevated awareness and concerning to the long-term consequences of head trauma. However, the tenacious decisions made during the rapid play can occasionally lead to unintentional helmet-to-helmet contact. This has raised questions about fairness and consistency with penalties. So basically, yes, because people are so worried at times, it can cause unintended collisions that were not even intended, you know, and such. Therefore, the rules have made it where, sometimes they can be unfair, or let alone there can be an injury that's happened because the person is trying to avoid injury, but because of they're so worried about that, it causes something else. So that's just something to think about. Safeguarding quarterbacks. This has been going on since 2002. The NFL's commitment to safeguarding quarterbacks is unquestionably, yet rules implemented with objective in mind have yielded mixed results. While these rules have succeeded in reducing severe injuries to quarterbacks, they have inadvertently shifted defenders' attention to targeting quarterbacks' lower bodies to avoid penalties. This shift has unfortunately increased the likelihood of lower body injuries, such as rib injuries. Tua on our team has had those rib injuries. I know he did in 2021. And there's been other quarterbacks that have had those injuries recently, such as Justin Herbert, for example. The complexity of roughing the passer also has come about, as well as pass interference challenges. Pass interference has been in the news lately. In conclusion, the NFL's commitment to player safety is commendable, reflected in the diligent implementation of rule changes. However, a careful equilibrium must be maintained between enhancing safety and preventing the sport's core essence. As the league evolves, a collective effort involving players, coaches, and officials and fans is essential to navigating the complexities of rule modifications. So, what does that all mean to everybody? That's the big question that we're here for. Let's discuss it. Do rule changes affect the game and even cause more injuries? That's essentially what we're here for, right? Before we begin, let's go around the room here and let's actually see what your thought process initially is of what you think, and then we'll go over several resources that I found, and we'll read the information together, and let's see if that changes our mind. So we'll start with Color first. Color, do you think rule changes have consequently caused some injuries in the NFL?
In some respects, yeah.
Are there any specifics you think about it? Go ahead.
Well, I think it really more goes down to the preseason and training camp rules and practice rules of, lightening the load and not getting players acclimated to, impacts of the game until they're out there in full speed.
So you're thinking, and just to make sure I understood correctly, okay, and correct me if I'm wrong, you feel because of the slowing down the player, not letting them go full speed, or, certain ththings they can and can't do, inadvertently there can be injuries caused because of that, because they don't have the full motion going. So in the fact that they have to pull up. To give you an example, the quarterback wears the red jersey, right? And the defender is getting their positioning in to go straight after that quarterback to what would be sacked, and they're having to pull up or shift their body so they don't hit the quarterback.
Yeah, we have definitely seen injuries to some of the tacklers in that case, taking it off of the quarterback and just shifting it to another player. I could agree with that.
Okay, that's interesting. What do you think, Tonk?
So, just give me 1 second right here. I'm trying to type some. I wanted to search this real quick.
It's all right. Take your time.
Leather. So, when did we stop using leather helmets?
When did we start using leather helmets? Ooh, that's going way
Stop
back.
using. So I guess up to 1939.
Yeah, I want to say something around there.
Yeah. So there's always going to be some way. There's always going to be an aim to with football, with a lot of sports, but football, I guess, the most currently right now in this country. There's always going to be a push to make it safer, because it has to last, and it's kind of like almost trying to teach an old dog new tricks, because players have been playing a certain way for a long time, and then they all of a sudden have to make a change. So there's going to be this effect happening in the league, and it might have to be with rules implementation, or maybe we're evolving differently and we're more susceptible to injury. There's biological effects, but I think that there's always going to be some kind of cause and effect whenever you're implementing things like this to such a high motion sport. Whenever you change anything after something is going a certain speed, there's gonna be a impact that is non-intended.
I definitely understand that. I believe there was some. If you guys remember, I want to say it was like 3, maybe 4 seasons ago. I believe it was before the Flores era. They had just changed the rule about landing on a player when you're tackling them.
I remember that one.
It was specifically the quarterbacks, and basically what was happening is the quarterbacks. Hello, sir. How goes it?
I pop in here for a few minutes before.
All right, so we're talking NFL injuries.
And then
Yeah, so essentially, basically what happened is that I believe when the quarterbacks got a hold, I'm sorry, the defender got a hold of the quarterbacks, they couldn't just like throw them to the ground or whatever. They had to basically lay on top of them. It was a certain way they had to tackle. They changed it, and I believe
I know which rule you're talking about, Ali.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
They were whiplashing them.
Yeah,
so if they're tackling a quarterback from behind, they took away the rule where you can suplex the guy or whiplash the guy. You essentially need to grab and sit. They don't want to see them landing and rolling on them. It's an unnecessary roughness call
like
now.
what Dominic and did to freaking Matthew. No,
exactly.
Yeah, I remember that.
What did he do?
Here is the thing,
it's Joe
though.
Flacco.
And this is what Tonk had just mentioned prior to you coming in here, El Cap. Essentially, what transpired is there, and I cannot remember the defender's name. I know he was one of our defensive tackles or something, and he went to go after the quarterback. He went to sack him, but because of this rule, he had to kind of like pull up on his sack, and it caused himself to get injury just so he doesn't, get the penalty for roughing the passer. And they still gave him the penalty, and he injured himself trying to do it the way they want. It is not an easy transition. You mentioned it yourself, Tom. Trying to teach a dog old tricks or new tricks is a lot harder. Old dog, new tricks.
The sport is old, right? The sport is old. That's what I mean.
Well, to the NFL's credit and to football organized around the world, at least around for us from Pop Warner to high school, they're implementing these things early. So change. It's the wheels of change are like government. They turn slow. In 12, 15 years, when these kids that were playing Pop Warner are now playing in the NFL, they'll have always played by these rules. And so it will hopefully change in a better way. Something I am worried about, and I don't mean to, something I'm going to talk about here a little bit later on, is what happened with the Dolphins on their game where they ended the game and they didn't finish their preseason game. And the Patriots and Green Bay did the same thing. And I don't want something like that to become the new normal. Now, I don't want to be insensitive to a guy getting seriously injured, but ending a game because of that, to me, in the end, will be used for nefarious reasons. You know? Because if there's a team that's, say, up 10 points and their player gets injured and now the game is ended because it's a serious injury, does that team that was up 10 points concede the loss?
Do you? I know that kind of is going away from the whole premise of does the game rules cause injury, but let me ask this question. Do you feel that the NFL maybe should adopt let's continue the rest of the game at a later time attitude, or do you think they should just play it out?
That's a great question. I guess that would have to be determined if the guys needing to get airlifted out of the stadium because it was a bad hit, or
if
it was a bad hit.
Severity.
I would say, but I would always err on not playing these games, because to me that's a slippery slope. I'm a conspiracy guy by nature, and I don't trust betting in the NFL. I don't trust the owners to the outcomes and the NFL as an organization to dictate the outcome because they want certain things to happen the way that they were supposed to happen. And if there's teams having to concede regular season games like they did these preseason games, this year it's one game. Next year it's 3 games. Next year it's 3 games and a playoff game. Before you know it, an injury is going to decide a Super Bowl. It's a slippery slope is what I'm saying.
Well, I mean, we did see some of that with who was it? Was it the Saints and Colts Super Bowl when the power went out? That was the Niners and the Ravens. And you know what? They were getting worked. And then the power goes out and the whole game changes real quick. So again, I don't trust it. I don't play it. I know. Well, I know you, but I'm not. Doesn't mean I'm for it, against it. But what I'm saying is, if you're looking at some nefarious reasons and having control of the game, that would mean that they're like trying to get someone hurt. Someone is purposely hurting themselves. I mean, to hurt yourself so bad that you got to get airlifted out. Nefarious, or however you say that word.
Nefarious both ways. Now that you point that out. Because now you can have guys be ending the game by hurting somebody on purpose.
Well, like Bountygate.
Well, yes, that's a great point. If the games are getting ended because people are getting hurt, then I can end this game by taking a cheap shot. Now, also,
look, it's called game manipulation.
Yes, that's what they're doing. I don't want anything other than the outcome of the game to be how this ends, rather than some other reason the game is in something else's control. I don't like it in the ref's control. I don't like all the super replay slow-mo nonsense. I get it, but it just, you can't tell me, guys, but you're seeing a ref and then they don't show the replay and they go on. You're like, dude, that wasn't a flag. We just got screwed. I don't like it.
I mean, cardiac arrest is pretty insane.
I think there has to be more accountability with the replay and the people in the booth watching the games and stuff and making sure it's called fair. I definitely agree with having it, but I think there has to be more accountability. There's been so many things that happen that they're not looking at because the ref missed it or whatever. And it's almost a way that they can manipulate the game. So I definitely agree with some of that stuff.
Watch that. I mean,
but I don't trust these. They're the guys with the cameras. Like what they show me on TV don't mean what really happened on the field, dog.
But doesn't the NFL?
First of all, what color's a green screen? Color's a green screen.
Whatever color they want it to be.
What color's the grass on the field?
Green.
Don't show me no replay where the guy's feet were in when I saw him.
Home with the green screen. I've been to football games. I go to football games. So I don't want to hear nothing about a green screen.
Well, wait a minute.
We go to the games. All right.
Okay.
This is
got you.
All right.
We're not in
You
the,
know how
All
many
right.
times I've been in a game where I left
We're
it
on
and I'm
the-
like,
we're
we
in-
just
we're the
got
red
robbed.
zone, not the
That
Q
was
zone.
not a flag.
Here's another in this if you
No
work
Q-
in broadcasting, if you guys work in broadcasting, you know for the fact that there's about a 30-second delay from
Yeah,
what
'cause the
actually
players
happens
stand
on the
around,
field
too.
versus what is actually shown on TV. So there
got my
could
phone.
very as well be some nefarious issues that El Cap is talking about could be going on in that 30 seconds. It gives them
Well,
enough
Las
time
Vegas
to change
just
it.
got a team,
Well,
boys. The
well,
Raiders and Vegas and betting are in the NFL.
So it's gonna
Watch
be
out.
it's gonna be what's his name?
Scouts
Austin
honor?
Powers 4. Austin Powers 4 and is gonna go damn it, I forgot what I was gonna say.
What, Dr. Evil?
Oh
You
no,
talking about
yeah, Project we'll call it Project Nefarious.
Project Nefarious NFL. We're going to take over the
We
world
want
by
$100
rigging
million.
sports betting and using the green fields to
Preparation
dictate
H.
the outcomes of
Preparations I
preparation
through J
H.
didn't work. All right, so we're almost off topic a little bit. Though.
Yeah,
All right,
let's
I
go
was
back
just
to the
coming in
topic.
to throw a
it's
screwball,
all right.
boys.
It's all good.
I got a dip set out. I'll see you fellas later. I
All
just
right,
figured
thanks,
I'd come in
man.
and drop a screwball on you boys. I'll see.
More like a
Thank
cue
you.
ball.
Thanks, El Cap. All right, that was El Cap and his curveball of the day. So let's keep it going. This is Broken Takes. This is technically the area where he's allowed to speak that stuff
Oh
about
no,
the
it's all
nefarious
good. Hey,
shenanigans.
it's all
That's
good.
what
Bring
happens here.
Bring it on.
Broken
bring it
Takes
on.
is where it's supposed to be done. But
See, now you're
let's
starting
keep
to
on.
get to know him personally when he starts throwing that your way. Now
Oh,
you're
yeah,
really
definitely.
getting to know Cap
Yeah, oh, yeah,
in a good
definitely.
way.
Oh, yeah. So let's talk about the NFL injuries. Now, before we do, there's a couple things I'm going to go over. And I'm going to let you know that if you go to NFL.com/player health and safety, there is a slew of information that you can get about player health and safety. There's articles written, announcements, like, for example, the NFL announces 2023 roster of medical students participating in league-wide diversity in sports medicine pipeline initiative, and so on. They are involved really heavily with various different organizations, doctors, and health specialists and professionals about everything that goes on in the NFL, not just with player injuries that happen on the field, but also with COVID, mental health, you name it, they have something for it. They list a lot of data over the past several years about injuries that happened in the preseason and whatnot. And some of it is injuries we're going to go over. We're going to talk about some of that data. And then there's some parts of it that they don't talk about that I'm kind of worried that, why is it taking so long for certain information to come out, right? And that kind of falls under like kind of what El Cap was talking about, how they can cover things up to meet their own narrative.
The green screen effect.
Yeah, well, this isn't the green screen effect. This is, hey, there's information out there, but we're not going to show it to you effect.
That's
we'll talk
what
about
got
that.
going on here. I know that for sure.
Yeah, there's a lot of medical research information you can look at this on this website as well. So I feel free to go to, again, NFL.com/player health and safety. Go there and you can see all this information. It's really good stuff. So with that being said, let me just go over this part first. And this is making football safe, a history of injury prevention. And this basically goes along with what the NFL has done as of late. And it kind of gives you like the eras of what they basically became concerns and, where they started to pinpoint, focus on certain injuries. So during the 1940s and 1980s, spinal cord injuries was a thing. That was like a big time thing, right? That was career ending, if you remember. At one point, spinal cord injuries were considered one of the greatest risks of playing football. From a historical perspective, between 1945 and 1994, nearly 85% of all football-related injuries resulted from head and cervical spine injuries. The greatest number of those injuries occurred between 1965 and 74, with a dramatic decrease in the last 2 decades. Injuries in the cervical spinal cord occur when a player makes a tackle with his head down, striking the opponent with the crown of the helmet, known as spear tackling. People remember, was it Ryan Shazier from the Pittsburgh Steelers? Had the big one, I believe it was against the Cincinnati Bengals, and Shazier had to, basically had medical staff and had to be carted off the field and everything. And it was a big thing because for the longest time, I don't think he could, he was left paralyzed and
So you
whatnot.
said it just went down exponentially. That injury.
About the last 2 decades, yes.
Okay, and there's been a lot of safety implementations made in the last 2 decades.
Yes, specifically about how you can tackle players and so on. So let's keep it going. Here. So largely due to the work performed by Dr. Joseph Torg, a renowned orthopedic surgeon in Philadelphia, a rule was passed to outlaw spear tackling. With the adoption of this rule, the occurrence of cervical quadriplegia, I believe it's how it's pronounced. I apologize if I didn't pronounce that correctly. In football, decreased from 34 cases in 1976 to only 5 in 1985. Right? The current incidences of cervical spine injuries in football is 0.4 cases per 100,000. This was the first rule change in NFL that had a direct impact in decreasing the incidences of the catastrophic injury and making the game safer, just so you're aware. So spear tackling was taken away. You were not allowed to play real-life NFL blitz, if anybody remembers that arcade game. So just pointing that out there. That was a great game, by the way. In the 2000s, actually, I'm sorry, in 1990s, during the 90s, performance-enhancing drugs were a big thing. Protecting the health and safety of players has included taking drug abuse and steroids out of the game. The NFL started to perform random year-round steroid testing since 1990, the first league to do so with immediate suspensions for any violation, right? All players get tested for illicit drugs every year. If positive, players are required to enroll in a drug rehabilitation program and are tested more frequently. Players who continue to test positive for illegal drugs will get suspended and even permanently banned from playing football in the NFL. The NFL is now exploring testing to make sure human growth hormone, HGH, is not used by the players. There are some studies that have suggested that there may be a link between performance-enhancing drugs and concussions and brain disease. That's interesting. That's some interesting stuff right there. So now with the current CBA, just so you're aware, there are a big discussion about what should be allowed and what shouldn't. More recently, you had Aaron Rodgers, former MVP and Hall of Fame quarterback in his own right, that's still in the league. He has been speaking out for the right to use psychedelics. That is technically some illegal substance, not necessarily illegal, but it's a questionable substance that maybe it should or shouldn't. Controlled, yes, we'll go with controlled substance of some kind, right? That's something. There's substances out there that have, that in some cases people believe they're holistic or they're all natural, but there's some questionability of should they be allowed in the league or not. And it doesn't have to be steroids or HGH. There's a lot of substances that can be considered performance enhancing that we may have to put a question mark on. First of all, yeah, okay, they provide, maybe it's for healing purposes. But are there some long-term effects that could make the game dangerous? Is the guy going to have an issue with taking some of these substances in the middle of a game that causes even more harm? Those are some questions that they had, right? It says, it goes on, it says, there are some studies that have, actually, we already talked about the brain disease. Okay, we talked about that. In 2000s, heat and hydration were a big thing, right? In 2001, Corey Stringer, a lineman of the Minnesota Vikings, unfortunately passed away of heat stroke during training camp. That was one of the first time you ever seen that, and it has become an issue not just in the NFL, but in sport in general. The unfortunate event led to great research in heat and hydration and better education for our medical staffs and players. The Philadelphia Eagles have now led the NFL in such research. Our players swallow a capsule containing a thermometer to record accurate core temperatures of our players during training camp. Did you guys know that?
I
Wait,
mean,
I had
wait,
no
whoa.
they
idea.
swallow a sensor of some kind?
That's what it says.
Well, it's like when you watch the Sports Center show, Sports Science.
Yeah.
You know, they just, yeah. I mean, they got all sorts of ways to measure people. I mean, that's got to be super effective. I mean, the health and safety, from heat and hydration is, we
Yeah,
should.
it's basically an internal GPS you just put in there. There's so who knows what they can find out from you, right? This helps to identify players that become overheated and then are pulled from practices and are allowed to cool down. These players then drink fluid to replace those lost electrolytes, right? All players are weighed before and after practices. If a player lost significant amount of water weight, then they are not permitted to return to practice until their weight has returned to the pre-practice weight. The players are encouraged to drink fluids with electrolytes before, during, and after practice. In addition, IV fluids are administered to players that start to develop cramping, injuries to the lower extremities, such as the knee and ankle, continues to be problematic for football players and have shortened many careers. The NFL studying the relationship between clear wear and playing surfaces on the incidence of knee and ankle injuries. The injury and safety panel is currently evaluating potential rule changes and decreased knee and ankle injuries. That's kind of interesting, right? Let's keep it going from there. Present day, and this is the one that we experienced big time last season: concussion and head injuries. In recent years, there's been much sharper focus on concussions in football and other sports. There are still unanswered questions. The research and doctors know more about concussions and their long-term potential effects than they did even a few years ago. The NFL recently committed 30 million to National Institutes of Health for research on the brain. There is no question that there's tremendous benefits to playing team sports like football, benefits such as physical fitness, self-discipline, friendships, leadership opportunities, self-esteem, college scholarships, and most importantly, playing fun. In the future, we will look into the NFL through leadership, research, and rule changes is trying to make football safer to play. So, that being said, that kind of gives you a history of some of the major injuries and safety concerns and some of the things the NFL did to help prevent them, to learn more about them, and what could be the cause of them, right? Or how they can prevent them altogether. Let's talk about something that's not listed here. That actually they kind of listed it, but it was kind of undertoned with the heat and hydration, which I don't necessarily agree that this is related to each other in a kind of sense. Let's talk about playing surfaces, and this is a big thing that I thought is also a leading contributor towards head injuries, ankle injuries, maybe even knee injuries in certain cases. And this has become more of a thing in 2023 is the players' disdained dislike of playing on turf versus grass. The NFLPA and players that are part of the NFLPA agree that they want to play primarily on grass. Turf, no matter what the turf is, it can be even artificial turf that is meant to be more like grass, has caused injuries. That's what they believe, right? There's several articles on it. Give you an example. Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I think it's stupid they changed it to turf. Like grass is, we need. I don't. Yeah, I could see maybe for like. I've seen it on baseball fields, and I could see how it wouldn't. I mean, it might still make a difference, but as far as like, because you're not constantly running around in the outfield, I mean, you are, but it's like one player. It's not a whole bunch of players tackling each other and stuff. Versus like a flat field, it's solid. There's no slippage unless it's like raining or something. So yeah, that's got it. Like there's no way I would want to play on fake turf rather than real grass.
Yeah, I definitely understand. This is an article I was reading from Pro Football Talk, right? This came out May 24th, right? The NFL players want all playing surfaces to be grass, not turf. The NFL prefers to let teams play on artificial surfaces if they choose. The debate has intensified in recent months. This was after a Tuesday night feature of HBO's Real Sports with Bryant Gumbel addressed the situation, focusing on how the use of turf has trickled down to the high school level, causing an epidemic of injuries. While not quite an epidemic yet at the NFL level, a league source with knowledge of the situation tells PFT that the 2022 injury data for the turf fields was awful. And I want you to keep that in mind. 2022 injury data for the turf fields were awful. At this week's ownership meeting, this was back in May, NFL Chief Medical Officer Alan Sills acknowledged that the numbers weren't good. Without getting into specifics, none of the owners pressed for specifics were told. We've asked the NFL for the data, but the league has not yet responded to two separate emails on the issue, according to the article. As the source put it, the relevant representatives of the league office are experts at confusing the 26 owners who don't pay attention. The source added that on matters of turf versus grass, the league will gloss over the fundamental differences between injury risk on real grass and injury risk on fake grass. The situation is gaining momentum, especially with many noticing the willingness of owners of stadiums with an artificial turf to find a way to get grass installed for World Cup matches, since the get grass is a prerequisite to hosting games. So that's the only enticement to switching to grass that a lot of owners have had, because if they want World Cup of soccer matches, it has to be played on grass. That was a requirement. More and more people think grass should be a prerequisite for hosting NFL games. Obviously, it comes down to money. Despite many billions of league now generates, there are a degree of cheapness that keeps teams from embracing a better and safer surface. And there's also short-sightedness at play, given that they're failing to protect investments in the players who are exposed to these less than ideal working conditions. Wow. So the NFL owners are glossing over it. Can you guys believe that? That's some stuff right there. You know what I mean?
Well, I mean,
No, you don't say.
not surprising.
Not surprising, right? Yeah. And they do make billions of dollars. In fact, talk about being cheap. One thing we know for sure, our owner is not cheap. Do you know how many times they've changed the surface at the Hard Rock Stadium? I want to say it's at least 3 times since we've upgraded the stadium. They have changed it that many times.
What do you mean changed it?
So when I mean they changed the surface, means like, for example, for whatever sport or whatever event, it wrecked the field, it messed it up.
Okay.
So they came in and took all the grass out and they put down new grass. You know what I mean? They've changed the field. It's expensive. It's expensive. Not for our owner. It's not. That's the big benefit for someone that has a turf field versus a grass field. There's less maintenance. It's one and done. You don't ever really have to do anything to it. You know what I mean? Now, Color, let me ask you this, and maybe you know a little bit more about it, or even you do, Tonk. These there's in Seattle, they have this. It's like a hybrid AstroTurf and grass field. Feels like grass, looks like grass. My understanding, they also put pebbles down on it for whatever reason.
Yeah, there's little rubber beads in it that basically mimic a soil, or dirt.
Okay, so it's an artificial dirt or soil, basically.
Right.
And that could give grip to players and stuff.
Also cushioning for, impact.
What's interesting, Seattle and other teams, not all of them, but quite a few other teams have this similar type of hybrid AstroTurf. And even with that, based on this article by Pro Football Talk, right? They're still having awful data put down in place for the injuries that are being caused on turf versus grass. So even with that, the numbers look really bad. Now, the reason I'm bringing this up, it's funny enough. You know that website I told you to go to on NFL.com? Go to health and safety, player safety. Remember what I'm talking about? I put on there you could find injury data for previous years and preseason years. Guess what year you can't find? 2022 injury data is not found on there whatsoever. You can't find it anywhere.
For any team?
Well, you might be
maybe it
able to
hasn't
look
been
up
finished.
individual. No. Hear me out though. Hear me out. So some of the information data that they have, it comes back from not the whole season, but just for the preseason, right? Why do they have 2019, 2020, and 2021, but they don't have 2022? That's really weird, right? And this comes after at the team meeting with all the owners, right? That, hey, we have had really bad data come back from the AstroTurf injuries and how bad they are for their players and whatnot. The NFLPA and the players want grass. They don't want AstroTurf, and they've glossed over it, right? And when they got called out about the numbers to discuss it, they didn't want to return the phone call to give that information out. What, right? Why hasn't it not come out yet? Why is it all the other years they've come out? In fact, the preseason data that I was looking at, based on the dates that they were posted, was like a couple months later in the mid regular season that they came out. So you've had the whole season, the whole off season, and we're on the eve of a new season starting, and that data still hasn't come out. I wonder why. Why, Color?
I don't know, Ali.
I hate to get on those venerious reasons that El Cap talked about earlier, but that is kind of shady in a weird way, right? I mean, think about it. You don't want to take anything away that messes your bottom dollar, right? NFL owners, that's what they worry about. They want to get paid. They want to see profits. They don't want to see overhaul of stadiums and getting their pockets hit with bills and stuff, right? That's what it comes down to. So they're going to take the cheap route over what is right and paying and doing the right thing, because that's going to cost more, more overall. That's my opinion, right? So that's one factor that is starting to come about, and it became much bigger throughout the season last season. And some of the data that the NFL has put out also backs that up. And let me see if I have some of that data handy. We can talk about it. Let me bring this up here. And let me see if this is it, because this is one of them I was looking at. Nope, this isn't it. One second. I'm just trying to find the data information I was looking for. But what do you guys think?
I didn't realize I was muted. I freaking just said so much and I was muted.
Go for it, sir. Go for it.
Sorry. So the NFL is gonna, it's always gonna be changing a little bit every season. There's gonna be a little bit of change. So that's gonna always keep happening. But as far as like looking at safety and things of that nature and health, but also sustainability, you're seeing more and more stadiums that are LEED platinum or got solar panels on them, or Climate Pledge Arena, where they've invested in some kind of sustainable option for energy usage. And then like if you go
paper
there,
straws at
they don't really
they don't have
any. Everything is compostable in a facility, so it's all compostable silverware and dinnerware. And so they're gonna start applying that towards fields, towards everything that has to do with the stadium itself. But it doesn't mean it's going to be better. It might be cheaper and it might be eco-friendly, but we're losing the fundamental of the game when you're when you can only change so much before it's not the same sport anymore.
That's what I fear, Tonk. You know, it's already changed so much and we're hanging on by a thread. Some of us are like in the thought of, I don't want to just see a Super Bowl before I die. I want to see a Super Bowl before the game changes to something else. You know, and that's coming soon, man. That's going to come sooner than most of us are going to die. You know what I mean? So
you can't stop change.
And at what point do we just call it something different? American sports ball or whatever you want to call it, you know?
Here's the other part of it, though.
American handball.
Since some of these rules have implemented, and this is where I was trying to find this article that I had that had like bars and graphs I could share with you all. Over the years, prior to the rule change, there were injuries. Injuries part of the game. It's a violent sport. There's nothing you can do about that. But when you implemented the changes to the rule to make the game safer, it caused more longer lasting injuries. The data that I had found actually showed in the last, I want to say 4 years, though the same amount of people got injured because of injuries, the time frame it was taking for them to heal increased. They missed more weeks without football. There was more time off. That was kind of interesting, right? For certain types of injuries. Then there was an all-time low of head injuries and concussions recently, up until the last year, 2022. Then there's a huge increase over the last year. So it seems like as they make changes, there's a transition period where there's a significant amount of injuries, or there may be the same amount of injuries, but the long-lasting effects of the injuries are much more, longer lasting to recover from. To give you an example,
right?
This was kind of interesting too. Going back to the grass thing, what I just found is another article by NFL Pro Football Talk (PFT). During the 2022 season, ESPN published data supplied by the NFL that supported to show that injury rates on grass and artificial turfs were approximately the same. The NFL Players Association says the data was misleading and that the NFL highlighted one outlier year's worth of injury rates when the full body of research makes clear that the players are injured more often on artificial turf. According to the NFLPA, and this is where I was talking about those Fenarius things, and I just want you to hear the selective words that they're stating, right? And it's
all right,
funny
but that's
I mentioned
now, Ali, so I've got to correct your spoonerism, dude.
Okay, go ahead.
Nefarious. Let's say it all together. Nefarious.
I said nefarious. What did I say?
You said twice. You said Fenarius.
Oh, I thought you said
Not gonna
nefarious.
lie.
My bad.
Just the spoonerism. That's all. It's okay.
It's all good. So according to the NFLPA, the NFL selectively released injury data from 2021. What's the big word there that makes you think, Color?
Electively.
Selectively.
Oh, selectively. Oh, damn,
yes,
that's even
selectively.
worse.
Yes. So what does that mean, Color, to you? When someone says, I selectively released injury
let's
data,
break
what
down
does that
the word,
mean?
Ali, coming from the root word select, which means to choose.
So they chose what injury data to release from 2021, and 2021 happened to be an unusual year because of injury rates on artificial turf and grass were very similar that year.
Hey,
Although,
Ali, you want to know something else?
What?
You know what select is another synonym for?
What is it?
Cull.
Really?
Yeah.
What?
A selector
Colt?
could a cull. A selector could also be known as a color. Now you know.
That's funny. So you're telling me you're a selector?
Selector commentary.
I am,
Ah.
or select commentary.
Hmm. Yeah. So anyway, basically, what they're saying is that they selectively chose the data to provide, which happened to be an unusual year since the data really supported that there was equal amount of injuries on both sides. Why didn't they look at the other data or the 2022 data that definitely
Well,
supports it? That's what's weird
so
about it, right?
they're protecting the
But
shield. It's similar to what the owner of the Washington Commanders, he carried that survey in his pocket about Native American survey about the
mhm.
Redskins and how he had a survey
Mm.
that said they didn't really find it offensive, but like there was talk that it wasn't
Well,
very
that's a
authentic.
bigger issue, Tonk. That it has
Yeah,
more
but
to
I'm
do
just
with.
saying it's protecting the shield or it's
Oh, I
protecting
got you,
his
but
name.
I got you. But
Mhm.
turns out there's a big organization that apparently had this survey in their pockets too. It wasn't just him.
Oh well,
Like
Yeah.
it's the
whatever.
rest of the story, but I don't want to get into it.
But let's keep it moving to stay on topic here. So the NFL, listen to this. So NFLPA president JC Treader, a guy we really wanted on this team at one moment, wrote on the NFLPA's website that the injury data from the 2022 season makes clear that the 2021 was a statistical outlier, and in every other season for which there is injury data to compare grass and turf, grass has proven significantly safer. And this is the article that he wrote about. And let me bring that up here because that it's some really good information by JC Shredder. He goes on to saying, as a rookie learning the ins and outs of being a professional football player, I remember the collective groan that my older teammates made whenever it was announced that we'd be practicing indoors or artificial turf instead of the usual outdoor grass field. I played almost exclusively on synthetic turf in college. Once I started experiencing both surfaces interchangeably, I began to understand exactly why my teammates disliked the practice on turf. Whenever I practiced on an artificial turf field surface, my joints felt noticeably stiffer the next day. The unforgiving natural of artificial nature of artificial turf compounds the grind on the body we already bear from playing a contact sport. First, a bit of physics. Professional football players put extremely high levels of force and rotation onto the playing surface. Grass will eventually give, which often releases the cleats prior to reaching an injurious load. On synthetic surfaces, there is less give, meaning your feet, ankles, and knees absorb the force, which makes injuries more likely to follow. Colors. So basically, what they're trying to say, and let me just correct me if I'm wrong, on grass, the way the cleats the grass releases the cleat, there's a less of a force and blow to the body when it comes to your ankles and
Right.
and everything versus what like how the cleats or however whatever shoes you're wearing basically on an artificial turf, it's a lot more stiffer, I'm assuming. Can you
Oh
explain a little bit
yeah.
more like what they're talking about? Good.
Yeah, and the thing of it is that's still the case because you think about because what this artificial turf is now is
Hmm.
basically just plastic grass. If you've ever walked on it, it literally looks like grass. Just
They
it's
use it out
plastic.
here.
It's like a fake plant. You know what I mean? And I can see where a natural blade of grass, being that it is a lot, more, let's say, it's a lot easier to tear and it's a lot more fragile than a plastic version of a blade of grass. I can see how the cleats would probably, sometimes like stick to it. You know what I mean? Like adhere a little longer, like he's saying.
Hmm.
However, it used to be far worse with the original AstroTurf. because they used to have actually a special cleat that they wore. If you ever saw those shoes, those football shoes that they wore on, like if you ever watched the Houston Oilers play a lot, because they had that old AstroTurf, the bottom of their shoe looks like they just like little knobbies. They're not really cleats. You know what I'm talking about, Ali? They're like knobbies that are really close together. And what that would do with that AstroTurf is it would cause this like Velcro action where they would like literally their foot would stick to the turf, and it would cause all kinds of ankle injuries and knee injuries and whatever else. Plus the fact that it was pretty much a carpet of plastic down on some concrete. You know what I mean? It was like playing street ball almost. I think Doc Brown can probably attest to that a little more.
Sounds like a nightmare.
Yeah. And so, you know, it would also get old and worn out. What it amounts to, what it really is, if you can think about it, the old turf. Remember those old style welcome mats that were like green and like plastic and like really flat, almost like fake grass, but like really flat, or that stuff that looked almost like velour, that green like carpeting that almost looks like velour.
The Tampa Bay Rays have an AstroTurf grass. I've stood on it, and playing any sport on that would suck.
Now is that that old style? Is that old style, Tonk? Like I was saying,
I'm not exactly sure.
Or did it feel like you were walking on grass, but just fake?
No, it was totally like, I was like, you can't really tell from far away. But like when I was standing there, I'm like, what the hell is this? I was like, this is some weird shit. It was like, it looked like just a flat kind of cushiony fabric.
Right. That's what I'm talking about. Like that velour looking welcome mat that's like kind of rough feeling, like almost like sandpaper.
But it's
here, let me show you guys this graphic real quick. Actually, let me put you guys. Why is it not letting me bring up this graphic? 1 second.
Baseball, it actually changes the game because the ball bounces off it higher, like a golf ball.
Yeah.
And
if they, I mean, I don't know. It's definitely probably a price. You know, it's because it's like grass. You know, grass takes time to grow too. So, you know, if they're doing a lot of sports on one field, well, then grass is it's gonna be very difficult.
So look at the screen here. If you guys look at the screen, I guess there's no background on this. So essentially, your regular grass, you're gonna have cleats that look like this, right? They're spaced out. They're protruding and whatnot. The molded hybrid type of turf, this is that like artificial, but it's supposed to be like a real grass at the same time. Their cleats look a lot similar to the ones above. They're still molded and whatnot, and they're maybe not as protruding, essentially, right?
Right.
Then the AstroTurf, which was really playing on artificial, like carpeted concrete. That's really what it was like. If you look at the shoe, it has these little nubs on them.
Right.
And that's
like
what's
made.
Yeah, that's what they're made for, to be run on, something like that. And I'm gonna tell you right now, I used to play indoor soccer, right? And unfortunately, the place I used to play at, it was on AstroTurf. And I will tell you, running on AstroTurf is a lot different than running on like the artificial hybrid grass or any of the other surfaces. It wears on your ankles a lot more. You tend to have to push off your toe, your toes and your heels a lot more. At the end,
your knees, Ollie, your knees
Yeah,
when
and
you're
your
running
knees.
on a harder
Yeah.
surface, man.
Exactly. The grass provides that cushion, and it's a lot more relaxing and less tolling on the body. I agree with JC Shredder. And if you go on to read his article, which you can find, on the NFLPA's website and whatnot, go ahead and read the rest of it. He goes on to say that the players all want everyone to change both their practice facilities and their stadiums to true real grass. Luckily for Miami, they already have a stadium that they have grass. Their outdoor training facility has grass. It's just their indoor they probably don't. And that's probably something they have to figure out. But that's what they're requesting that the owners do. Now, from what I understand, the owners at the meeting kind of glossed over it. They don't really care because it's going to hurt their bottom dollar. That's the thing. Well, when you start getting injuries left and right as the years go on, eventually it's going to start hitting their bottom dollar. That's all I'm going to say. Mm-hmm.
Damn, that's crazy.
Yeah. So
it's just so when I was in college, my final project I did for my bachelor's degree, we chose a ice skating rink across the street from where the campus was I was going to. It was literally right across the street. And I went there and I asked them if we could do our project on their ice skating rink. I focused on energy, how much money they could save with switching out light bulbs and their HVAC system. And then one of my teammates focused on the rink itself and the money that was used to have frozen water as an ice skating rink. And there's other options that can be used. One is like a glycol kind of product, and it's kind of like they tried it, but it doesn't really work. And I think it was cheaper in the long run, maybe because maybe you don't need a Zamboni as often, or whatever that machine is called. But in reference to the other turf that we're talking about, there's always going to be some new look, but there's some things that we just can't change if we want, it's just going to be a cost, and just maybe look into better, faster growing grass or soil that lasts longer, or, ways to mitigate the cost of new turf.
Yeah, I definitely understand. Yeah, it is pretty interesting, and that it's not just the turf and surfaces that are making the game different in a sense and causing more injuries. In some cases, so is the equipment. You know what I mean? We've seen the change and evolution of the helmet, and now for example, our quarterback Tua is wearing a specialized helmet that is supposed to soften the load and blow to the head, and everything to reduce the amount of concussions. Now, so far, I've heard promising things about it, and we'll see what where that goes. I've heard a lot of promises. That's good stuff. But do you think some of the pads that players wear nowadays is the bigger issue with some of their concerns? You know what I mean? Or some of their injuries. What was the position we were talking about yesterday, Color, where the player, they don't wear the bigger pads anymore like they used to?
7-on-7.
No, Color, you remember we were talking about that, remember? Color? Or did we lose Color?
He fell asleep.
I hope not. Color, you're on mute.
I'm sorry. What was that, Ollie? Sorry about that.
Do you remember yesterday we were talking about a player in regards to the amount of pad, how big of pads he wears? He used to wear they used to wear bigger pads, and now they're wearing these
especially in the shoulders.
Yeah. What position was that we were talking about?
I thought it was running back.
Was it running back?
Either that or corner. Somebody with real compact pads. I think it was running back. Yeah, running back with the A-chain shoulder injury.
That's right. Yes. If you look at the running backs from the 80s and 90s, it looked like they had some big, broad shoulders, pads on them, right? They looked menacing, even when you look at old Ricky Williams.
Like Brian Bosworth looking at.
Yeah, I mean, I'll have to pull up some pictures, but you go look at the running backs. You look at guys
there's a great example. Lorenzo Hampton from the Oilers. Look at his pads were massive, dude. Running back.
And then look at the running backs today. It looks like they're hardly wearing any pads. They look like they're wearing wide receiver pads, if anything. You know what I mean? That's what they look like. And yeah, it makes them. I'm not gonna say it makes them faster or anything, but because of the pads that they're wearing or lack of, maybe that causes more injuries. You know, they're still getting hit. They're still getting hit by big, massive, men in the trenches and linebackers and stuff. You know, it takes a toll on the body. You're going to see a lot more injuries now with that. Now, up to date news, I heard that Savon Ahmed is day to day. He's not in concussion protocol, which is great news, right? But maybe that's kind of like the trade off. Yeah, you might be faster and you're going to be successful, but when you get injured it's going to hurt, with the lack of pads or the equipment they're using. I'm not saying that equipment is causing some of the injuries, but the lack of equipment in certain things can as well, so that's something to think about. um let's see, what else do we got here? So we've talked about the big argument about the grass versus turf. That's a big thing that's going on now. We've talked about the NFLPA and how and the NFL and what they did over the years in different generations. This past year, we had concussions as being one of the biggest issues, right? Um, the NFLPA and the NFL agreed on a system that worked for concussion protocols, put it in place, and on the grandest stage, when it didn't look like it was the right call or they felt there was rise for concern that followed those rules, they came in and decided that they were going to change the rules. Now, granted, I think it's for the better. I mean, yeah, you have spotters put in place. There's certain things that protocols they have to go through and everything to verify if someone has an injury or not. And we saw that play out in the preseason so far. What do you guys think of some of the rule changes they made recently when it comes to concussion protocols and stuff? Do you think it works? Do you think it's just the same, no difference? Like, what do you think?
Some of them make absolutely no sense to me whatsoever, based on what we understand, the information that we do have about how concussions work and their effects. Totally counterintuitive, in my opinion. Again, I'm not a doctor, I'm not a scientist, but it seems to me that with the way we saw things play out last season, that it really, to me, seemed counterintuitive, is all I could really say, And then you have the knee-jerk reactions, the lack of knee-jerk reactions throughout, coming from the spotters, non-independent spotters, as far as organizationally, who they're employed by, and then you have, to conclude it all in the season last year, you have Miami Dolphin fans acting as spotters 3 days after a football game is over with and sending a guy to concussion protocol. Where were those spotters?
That's a good point. So essentially, the NFL is stating that they're committed to protecting players from unnecessary risk while keeping the game fair, competitive, and exciting, is what they say, right? The 2023 NFL rule changes. These are rule changes that they've put into place. Instant replay reversal. New for 2023, when an instant replay decision results in a reversal under the 2 minutes, the play clock will reset to 40 instead of 25 unless another rule requires otherwise, such as when there is a 10-second runoff, in which cases the play clock reset 30. That doesn't really help the player personnel. Let's see what else they say here. So Points of clarification: use of helmets. The officiating department will continue to emphasize the use of helmet rule, which first was adopted in 2018. The officiating standards for use of helmet rules are lowering the head not to include bracing for contact, initiating contact with the helmet to any part of the opponent's body. Contact does not have to be in opponent's head or neck area, lowering the head and initiating contact to the opponent's torso, hips, lower body is also a foul. That's interesting. So it doesn't have to be the neck or head you hit. If you lower your head and hit anywhere on the body, it's automatic flag. Am I
You know
correct?
what I didn't notice in there?
So
A
that's a difficult thing to adjust to.
I didn't notice a rule against. I didn't notice a rule against taking off your opponent's helmet and beating your own quarterback's ribs with it. Where was that rule?
Damn, color. Yeah, that rule is not there either. What is also interesting, why is there not a rule in preseason that in joint practices, when your star defensive tackle rips someone's helmet off and starts hitting people with it?
When
Maybe
did
there
that
should be a rule for
happen?
that.
I remember. I know.
Los
I don't know,
Angeles
ask
Rams.
Mason
Let's not
Rudolph.
forget.
Oh man.
ask Los Angeles Rams.
Ask Mason
That
Rudolph.
happened, and the NFL couldn't do anything because, from my understanding, the NFL does not govern joint practices. It's governed by the team.
Wow.
Ooh,
Yeah.
it's the Wild Wild West now.
Yeah, it is the Wild Wild West. That's something I found
So-
out recently too.
You know, I mean, they're saying that adding that extra pad on the helmet is helping concussion. So I wouldn't be surprised if we start having helmets that look like that.
Oh
They're
no.
literally going to start bubble wrapping the players.
So what you're saying, we're going back to leather helmets in a sense.
No,
Why
No,
not?
you're
If
talking
you
about
put in
this-
they
pad-
already have.
I understand. I was making a joke that we're going to start seeing bubble pads on the helmets. That's really what
Yeah.
I
I
was.
mean, if
making a joke
they,
about.
I mean, I could see the reasoning behind just putting more and more foam and
Mhm.
impact taking material rather than something hard. And like the heads up, I've always been
The
kind
problem
of
that they're
nervous.
again. See, this is what I talk about counterintuitive.
Mhm.
The problem is not so much impact, in my opinion, based on what I've learned about what causes a concussion and the injury that it actually is in the head. Like, the problem is inertia. The problem is Newton's law of motion, not impact.
Where we're gonna have impact though.
What I'm saying is, you can cushion all the impact all you want. All you're stopping is a blood vessel from breaking and getting bruised, and your cranium from cracking. But you're not stopping the brain from moving forward in an abrupt stop.
Mhm.
The only way to do that is to get inside the head and stabilize the brain from
Okay, well, that's
moving
not gonna
forward.
happen.
Of course, it's not going to happen. So the problem is inertia. It's not impact.
Yeah,
And
it's how to
you
maintain
can
the
put
inertia.
5 feet of foam in front of a helmet. If it stops suddenly, your brain is still going to move forward suddenly, causing the
That's
tear
rules.
of the membrane between the two layers, which is what the injury actually is.
Yeah, it's basically like if you take an egg, right? And you shake the egg without breaking the shell. Even though you've stopped moving the shell, whatever's internal could be still moving.
Right,
So-
right. When we did those impact projects with the egg in
Yeah.
school, we were trying to stop the eggshell from cracking, not the inside yolk from moving. That's almost impossible.
That is almost impossible. Just to keep this moving on the rule changes, 2023, tripping is now a personal foul, 15-yard penalty, and is subject to additional discipline whether it was called or not called on the field by officials. So if you're going to be tripping players, just so you know, even if you don't get caught, when they review, because they're going to be looking afterwards, and if it wasn't called on the field, be prepared for fines or even more. So that's what's going to be happening. What is tripping? The use or leg or foot to obstruct an opponent, including a runner. Just so you're aware. Let's see if there's anything else. That's just what they were. Some of the changes for 2023. The big question do
Could
these
they
rule
get rid of the
changes?
illegal batting of the football
I
rule?
also think that vaccines have something to do with it.
Vaccines. Now that's a whole different animal. Please explain.
Well, because I mean, I've had eczema my entire life, and my mom never got me the flu vaccine. I had just the regular ones, rubella and measles, mumps, rubella,
The required ones. I
polio,
got you.
like
Yeah.
hepatitis B.
Oh yeah.
And I think that was really it. Tetanus, but I never got. But I always had eczema on my feet growing up. Always. It wasn't so bad, but it would just be like these weird blisters on my feet. And after I got the COVID vaccine, my hands got so bad, and I'm dealing with right now. I'm dealing right here, and right here, like right now. And it's never been this bad until after I got the vaccine. And I think that some of these injuries is because our bodies are changing because of these vaccines. And regardless of why we get them, that's a whole different reason. But the fact that we are getting them is changing the genome of humans, and it might show. Because, I mean, I had bad knees my whole life. And my family doesn't have any history of these things that I have, but we also haven't been getting vaccines the people that before me, they didn't have as many vaccines as I have.
Interesting you say that about the human genome, because the human genome is pretty much like our DNA is pretty much made up of nothing but fragments of past viruses that we've been infected by.
But that was like
our entire
natural,
DNA structure is made up by pieces of
that's
retroviruses.
But that's different than like putting an altered dead
well, what is
virus
I mean, that's what a vaccine is a virus itself. So yeah.
But that's not the same as 10,000 years.
I just thought it was fascinating. Like when you really think about it, we're all just a big conglomeration of viruses. That's all we are.
Yeah, definitely. I definitely understand that. So that's a good something interesting. I never thought about the vaccine part of it. We still don't know what the long-term effects of some of these vaccines are, if for football or vice versa. So that is a good question. For me,
but if I think the best thing we look at is that because military gets a lot of vaccines. Do they have injuries that are similar to football players? Like, do they end up?
Well, sometimes they do.
I mean, because a friend of mine was in the military.
They're just
he got a bunch of vaccines.
Yeah, they're just now settling the case of the Gulf War syndrome from back in the first time we were over there.
Yeah, interesting. So, one last tidbit because we're coming close to the hour and a half mark here, right? So BioRxiv.org, they did a study on the impact of rule changes on the number of severity of injuries in the NFL, right? Now, if you go to BioRxiv.org and you look up the impact of rule changes on the number of severity of injuries in the NFL, they have this full, basically, it's basically almost like an article that it shows you what their abstract thoughts were. They introduce the information. They include various information about the materials and methods and how they were going to review everything. Then they provide all their data and charts and everything and whatnot. And they discuss it, what their findings are. But their conclusion, which is the main thing I want to read, because ultimately some of the information is beyond me on what it does mean or not, but this is what they concluded. We studied the effect of rule changes made by the NFL before 2013 and 2016 seasons. The 2013 rule changes failed to reduce the number of players with concussions leading to a loss of game time. The number of players who suffered arm and leg injuries leading to a loss of game time, or the severity of a leg, arm, or head injuries as evaluated by the number of weeks the player had to miss. Following the 2016 season, rule changes yet again, there are no reduction in the number of players who had leg, arm, and head injuries. However, we observed a significant increase in the severity of leg, arm, and head injuries. So this is kind of interesting. What they're stating is that their findings found that there was no decrease in the amount of people with leg, arm, or head injuries. Yet with the rule changes, they saw an increase in the severity of the leg, arm, and head injuries that occurred when these rule changes were put in place. So it didn't minimize. If anything, it maximized on the injury and the severity of it. As I said before, I found findings that showed that though the same amount of people were getting injured, the severity or how many games they missed increased a lot more, almost doubled, in fact. It goes on to say, despite NFL's tinkering with the rules and the continuous evolution of pads and protective gear technology over the years to perpetually enhance player safety, we have not observed a decreasing trend over the years in the terms of number of players who got injured, or in the number of weeks the injured player had to recover. In fact, the opposites. Our findings support the idea that the NFL games is inherently too violent and are too consistent with the citation and the rule changes of technological changes to protective gear. So basically, they're saying it's just too violent, and it doesn't matter what changes they made, it's still going to be, just as bad. That's what comes down to the main point.
That concludes our show.
Well, kind of. That kind of proves the point. But this is only from 2013 to 2016 they did the study on. I think they should reevaluate that now with some of the more recent changes that have been made. And if you're wondering what those changes are, since 2016, they have made several changes, such as the prohibits the leaper blocked attempt on a field goal and extra point. Remember in Madden, for example, you're playing, you get that guy, that middle linebacker or whatever, and you have him right up at the line, and he's the one making the running start and then leaps to block the field goal. That's what they prohibit now. You can't do that. Extends the rule changes the spot of the next snap after a touchback, resulting from a free kick to the 25-yard line for another year. They gave a receiver running a pass route defenseless player protection. Prohibits crackback blocks by a backfield player who is in motion, and even if he's not more than 2 yards outside the tackle when the ball is snapped. Reduce the length of overtime in the preseason and regular season games to 10 minutes. Later on, they made little changes, such as making permanent the playing rule that changes the spot of the next snap after a touchback, resulting from a free kick to 25-yard line. They made that permanent rather than just a one-time change. Let me see what else they did here. Modifying the kickoff play for only 1 year. They're even doing that again. They've made changes to that kickoff rule even this year. They keep evaluating it. They changed what the receiving team can do. Now they're changing what the kickoff team can do. Because if you remember, now the players can't even start running till the ball is actually kicked by the kicker, right? They made that change in recent years. And now they're even talking about implementing the XFL rules into the NFL. Other major changes came in 2020. Expanded the defense's player protection to include a kickoff or punt returner who is now being afforded the same protection as a pass receiver, both before, during, and after the opportunity to receive the kick. The protection extends until he can avoid or ward off impending contact from an opponent, and it emphasizes removing certain illegal techniques from the line, such as using a helmet as part of the bull rush or any block by an offensive lineman that involves initiating contact with the helmet. Game officials will continue to focus on identifying fouls in line play, specifically mobile blocks, cut blocks, and certain pass rush techniques where initiated contact with the helmet occurs. These are just some of the various changes that they made over the years since that time frame. But why I bring it up, that's kind of big, and you heard El Capitan mention it, is all these changes not only causing more injuries, as is the evidence show, specifically in the kickoff and special teams area, there is a lot more injuries. 20% of the injuries made in the NFL are happening during special teams. That's a fact, right? That is a fact. You see a lot more ACL injuries, hamstring injuries. You see knee injuries, all different types of injuries that are happening primarily during special teams. So, what my question is, by them adopting something similar to the XFL or some of these changes they made, are they taking away from the thrill of the game? Is it ruining the game? What are your guys' thoughts?
I think that's going to be very opinion based because I want the league to last, and I even said it's going to start looking more and more like flag football. I even said support flag football, support lower leagues that are part of this, what we're heading towards. So I'm partial to wanting anything that helps the game become safer and last longer. So I'm going to say yeah. Or whatever your question was, I'm for it.
Definitely. Listen, my point is this. I think that some of these rules, I could understand them putting in place if they really make a difference. If there is no difference being made and all you're doing is causing more injuries, why even put the rule in place? I think there needs to be more of a study on some of these rule changes. And now you have leagues out that are playing now, such as the USFL, XFL, and whatnot. Why don't you partner up with these leagues rather than seeing them as a competitor and actually help, give them, some strategic rules that they can put in place, test it over a shorter period of time before you actually implement it. Just like how they're thinking about adopting the XFL kickoff rules. Okay, come up with some ideas collectively, all three leagues, come up with some ideas. The shorter leagues, which would be the XFL or USFL, let them test it out, see how it works. Take that data and then see if it works for the NFL. And I also think, and this is kind of where I was saying on previous shows, and I'm going to say it here, I think until at the high school level, at least, all the way through college and the NFL level, and the USFL and XFL included, when they start playing by the same rules, I think that's when you're going to start seeing some of these decreases in injuries that are being caused by some of the rules, because there is a transition period. And as you said, you can't teach an old dog new tricks, right? You said it multiple times. I agree with that. I agree with that premise. When someone has it embedded and they've done it all their life the same way, when they tackle a person and how they wrap up, they're not going to change. It's going to take a long time for them, especially when you're already in midair running at such a high velocity and speed. It's hard to change your motion or, move out of the way or whatnot to avoid collisions. There's a lot of reasons. But I think the reality is that changes don't necessarily help in the short run. They may help in the long run, but it's yet to be seen. What do you think, Color? What are your thoughts?
Well, having played the sport and always had that on the back of my mind of injury and not feeling comfortable in all the pads and the helmet, having a piece of plastic with a metal face guard on the front, it just always seemed to me that, maybe call me old fashioned, it's hard for me to answer this question because I don't want the sport to change too, that much. But at the same time, call me old fashioned, but it seems to me that the more we try to progress into into better equipment and, rule changes and all this other stuff, I bet you that the real key is to go backwards and not forward. Like, let's just go out there and play naked.
Mhm.
I guarantee you the head injuries go down.
Well, like that's what the Olympics started out as.
I mean, I guarantee you, you know, you're going to have a lot less concussions, man, because people ain't going to be willing to stick their head out there like that, bro.
That's true. That is definitely
You know,
true.
you're going to have a lot better blocking technique and tackling technique because it's a tackle, not a hit, like we call it today. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
A hit. Wow, what a hit. You don't ever hear what a tackle. Because tackling is different than hitting.
Yeah, hitting is one thing. Hitting is a force of impact that two
Right.
players when they collide, whereas
Now, right.
tackling is a form of bringing your player down to the ground.
Right. And to exemplify what I'm saying, we've seen plenty of penalties because a player moved their head to the side to hit with the shoulder, or they tried to use really proper tackling techniques, and because the helmet is the diameter it is, it touched some part of their body it wasn't allowed to touch. You know what I mean? And they get penalized. It's like the guy was trying to like use proper, take that helmet off, and their heads aren't even making contact with each other. You know, so maybe the key is going to the back to the leather helmet days.
All right, fellas.
Maybe.
I gotta get going.
All right. Well, listen, this is the end of the episode, so let's get final thoughts in there. Tonk, I'll let you go since you got to go. What is your final thoughts? Where can people find you, Tonk? I appreciate you coming to hang out with me.
I'm mostly on Instagram. Just look up Tonk7, spelled the way it is on there, one word. I will be in Florida here this week for the next couple weeks, so I might see some people around. But yeah, that's the best social media to follow me on currently right now.
Okay, and your next show is Tuesday, maybe not so.
Yeah, we could do Tuesday.
No, I'm saying TMI Tuesday. Are you going to be available to do it, or are you going to be out of town Tuesday?
So this Tuesday I could do it because I leave Wednesday.
Ah, gotcha.
And then the following Tuesday we'll just see how it goes.
Gotcha.
If I will be in Orlando.
10-4. Got it. Well, thank you for hanging out with us, and we really appreciate you, man. And thank you for being on Broken Takes. Definitely.
Appreciate you as always, Tonk.
See y'all soon.
Thank you. You have a good day, man.
Too.
All right. So, Color, final thoughts. What are your final thoughts?
I don't have much, man. I just, it really is. I understand the where everybody's head is at, no pun intended, on this whole injury thing and the game changing and all that. It's just, I don't know. It's hard to see things that you love change like that. You know what I mean? And I feel like it's already changed enough, but I still like it for the sport it was. And I just don't want to get to the point where it's unrecognizable as the sport that we know it to be. You know what I mean? And, the NFL can do whatever they want. It's their league. It's a professional sport. So they could literally change it however they want. They could start shooting baskets if they wanted to, you know? But at some point you have to decide, well, is it the sport that I've always loved? And, I like to avoid these topics because I fear that just talking about it speaks them into existence. You know what I mean? I don't want to be an ostrich about injuries and all that, but, I don't know. It's just, we have to decide if we want the sport around as a society anymore, because anything beyond that is just changing it to something it isn't anyway.
Yeah, I definitely understand. I don't want this sport to change either. I like the NFL how it is currently. I think that there's a lot more oversight. That not really oversight. What's the word I'm looking for? There's too many hands in the pocket trying to think that they're doing the right thing, which I think is causing a little bit more injuries. I think certain concerns are being over exaggerated only because of the fact that it's less money for owners to do something about it. About that, so they're willing to address those concerns, whereas other things that are more expensive, such as changing the fields to all grass, which I think would help a lot of different. You're going to see a lot less ACL injuries, a lot less ankle or knee injuries in the NFL, right? I think changing the surface would be great to be all grass, to be honest. I think that would definitely work, but it costs more money than what team owners want to spend, right? Even though they make billions of dollars. In addition to that, I don't really know if there's a way to prevent concussions. Yes, the helmet thing, that might help quite a bit, but at the same time, how much can you do? How much can you actually stop when it comes to the force impact and what the internal body is doing after the impact? Because that's something you can't stop, as you mentioned. So, you know, it's remained to see here. But one thing is for sure, the study found that in certain years, even though they made changes, it didn't really reduce the number of people being affected by the injuries. If anything, it made their injuries more severe where they had to miss a lot more games. So that's kind of interesting fact. I'm going to see if I can find more information how that trends today versus back from 2013 to 2016.
Right.
You know what I mean? So that's going to be really interesting to find out. But thank you for joining me, Color. I really appreciate it. If you're watching at home, make sure you hit like and subscribe. Again, hit like and subscribe. Check out our other content. Check out the description below. And as I always say, thank you. Until the next episode, everyone, please have a good night and bids up.